I'm making a Vietnamese coffee.
All right. Well, we are now live. Well, actually, we're not live. We're being recorded.
Yeah.
So welcome to the World Alliance of Qara'im weekly Torah study. I'm joined today with Hakham Melech ben Yaakov of the World Alliance of Qara'im, and also a good friend of mine, Mr. Wilson, from somewhere in the world.
Texas.
Texas.
And I'm Yaakov ben Yisrael, also of the World Alliance of Qara'im. And today we're reading the last Parashath of the Torah, and it's what's called the I can't remember what it's called. But anyways, it's the last Parashath of the Torah.
One right before Genesis.
One right before Genesis, that's right. And it's called Zoth HaBerakhah. And this is the blessing. This is Parashath Zoth HaBerakhah.
All right, I'm just getting my computer set up.
And this is going to be one of those too, because it's a blessing. You just like any other blessing we've had in the Torah. There's going to be lots of single usage words and verbs and so forth that.
And we fancy people like me, we call that a hapax legomenon.
There you go.
But a peasant such as yourself can just call it a one-time use word.
Yeah, and so that means for the main conversation, a lot of these words are just guesses. But
right. Now, in all seriousness, what's very interesting is to compare the blessings here with the blessings that Yaakov gives the sons of Israel back in Genesis chapter 50, 49?
49, yeah, 49, 48, something like that.
Right. So to see how, in other words, how they're the same in many cases and how they've kind of played themselves out, like the blessings that were given to the sons of Israel have now played themselves out in kind of coming true in these blessings here with the tribes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a good comparison. Anywho. So take it away, Yaakov. I'm just setting up my computer so you can start.
Okay, so chapter 33, verse 1. وَزَوْثْ HaBerakhah أَشَرْ بَيْرَخْ مُوشَي إِيش هَأَلُهِيم أَثْ بَنَي يِسْرَائِيل لِفْنَي مُفْرُ. And this is the blessing which Moses, the man of God, blessed the children of Israel before his death.
Yaakov, you want to just give chapter and verse? Because Volky's trying to follow along here too, as well as I'm sure other people.
Yeah, that's 33:1.
Deuteronomy 33. Deuteronomy 33:1.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
ויאמר אדוני מסיני בא וזרח משעיר לעמו הופיע מהר פרן ועשה מרבבות קודש ממנו איש דת לעמו. So it's 33:2. And he said, who's speaking here? This is Moses. But Yomar is speaking about Moses being the one who is now beginning his blessing. Adonai mit Sinai ba. Adonai came from Sinai, and he shone forth from Seir for them. Hofia mehar paran.
I think we should define some of these places. Sinai, we know what Sinai is, right?
Mm-hmm. Mount Sinai.
Right. Seir.
That's the inheritance of Esau.
Right. And Paran
is the inheritance of Ishmael.
There we go.
And he came with a myriad of Kodesh, which is it's not saints, it's a saint. And from his right, or from his right hand, is an Ishdath, which is a fiery law for them. And the fiery law would have been Torah. Now, this is interesting because the word death is actually Aramaic.
I was going to point this out because the word dot is used in the book of Esther.
Yeah, in Daniel.
And we had always been taught in yeshiva that it's an Aramaic word, as you're mentioning right now.
Yeah.
And the question I've always had here is, does it really mean dot? Maybe it means something else here in the Hebrew, because the only time it's used after this, as far as I can remember, is in the book of Esther, where it's clearly, which is heavily influenced by Aramaic. So I'm curious.
Interestingly, there's the Aramaic of Esther the Aramaic's actually not really used aside from one or two words in Esther. It's actually written in Hebrew. The Aramaic that would be at the time of Esther is what's written in the book of Daniel. And that uses the same word, death.
Right.
But
hold on one second. I'm going to go to my guy again. My guy. What to do with him? Books. I'm just curious. Nook. And this is Robert Alter again. So we're talking about, let's see here, chapter 3. Now I got to go ahead a bit. 1 second. Let's see here. Oh boy, I already got into the footnotes at the end of the book. Blah, 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 blah. I'm just curious to see how he translates that, because he's usually very interesting in his translations. So chapter 33, we said, right?
Yep, that's 33. That's the second verse.
Right. 1 second here. Okay, just give me 1 second. Second verse. So he translates it like this: the Lord from Sinai came, and from Seir he dawned upon them. He shone from Mount Paran and appeared from Ribavot Kodesh. From his right hands, firebolts for them. That's how he translates it. But wait a second, before you laugh it off, when this guy translates something, he usually has a very good reason. So I would like to now go and look at the footnote and check his reason, because that never stood well with me, because dot is, as you mentioned, an Aramaic word. It's not a Hebrew word. So let's just see what we got here. Verse 2, from Sinai, appeared from Kodesh, firebolts for them. The Hebrew esh dot, anachronistically construed by later Hebrew exegetes to mean fire of the law, is not intelligible. Since God in biblical poetry, following Canaanite conventions, is often represented coming down to earth, hurling lightning bolts as his weapons, this translation embraces the proposal that the text originally read Ish Doleket, burning or racing fire, or something similar. That's his interpretation. I'm not opening it. Good night. Okay, so that's what he says. Interesting, right?
Yeah, so it's gonna be cool. Now we have firebolts that was given to the Israelites instead of a Torah.
Not firebolts, but he comes down with firebolts. But his explanation is, as always, is very, very, comes from a very deep place of knowledge, understanding, and always raises food for thought. So that's what we have here, right? Because Esh dot does not make sense. Esh dot does not make sense in this case. I don't know. Anyway, so that's his interpretation. I'll take it back here, and I'm going to just keep his translation open here as we go through it, because we're going to get a lot of words that we're going to have trouble understanding and interpreting. So, anywho. All right, Yaakov.
As we go through this, you're going to see something really strange. And that's because We start off the Barakah where it says Wayomar. Now this is obviously Moses speaking. Okay. And it says Adonai Mitzenai Ba. So the Ba here is accented as a perfect verb and not as a present verb. And because it's accented as a perfect verb, it's talking about Adonai himself being the one who came. All right, so where he came from. And then we have the participle lamo, which means for him. And then we get to the Ishtat, the firebolts were for him, for who we don't.
Which again, he says is shorthand for, or was changed somehow retroactively, or shorthand for Ish Doleket. So Ish dot, he says, never even existed in the original text. Anyway, maybe yes, maybe no, but it's an interesting
when he
interpretation.
provides the
What it does
original
show
text
is that,
to prove it, then I'll believe him.
right. I'm not saying he's necessarily right. I mean, he is coming from a secular point of view for the most part. You know, he's a professor. But what it definitely does point out is that nobody really knows what the heck Ish dot means. And it's certainly not clear that it means, law of fire, and that it's referencing the Aramaic word dot, right?
The word in every Torah scroll, an actual Torah scroll that's used in a synagogue, it's written together. It's written as one word.
Right.
Okay.
That's right. Ish dot.
Now, those were never vocalized, and so you had a tradition that it was a shtaf. It's interesting that the word, the actual word, aleph, sheen, dalet, you have in older Canaanite texts this word ashad, which means, or actually asad. We have it even in Arabic today, which means a lion, and it's used for people who are considered warriors. And just like even amongst the Sikhs are called the lions. But anyway, the point is that the word is written together, and then in the modern prints, text is actually separated. That's what's called the Keri. In the Ketiv, it's written together, and in the Keri, it's actually separated, and you have two different. But what I'm getting at is with the person, it's it's clear that it's Adonai that we're speaking of, that he came from some place, and whatever it was for Lamo, for him. Now the Lamo we're assuming is Israel. Okay?
Right.
And now we have Af Chovev. This is verse 4. Af Chovev. Amim. Kul Kedosha Biyadecha. Wahem Tuko Liraglecha Yisa Medab Berothecha. Now, this word Medab Berothecha is considered by many lexicons as a noun. Earlier Hebrew commentators have it as a participle, as a hifil participle. But let's go back to, so it says Av Chovev. Chovev means he loves. This is a present tense verb, Chovev, the participle, from Chavav, which means to love. But he loved Amim, which means peoples. Kul Kedashav Biadecha, all his saints are in your hand. Now, who is it? Who is Dior here?
Bob, that was the alternative name for Moshe's father-in-law.
Father-in-law, yeah, Chovav. Haim Tukul Raglecha Yisa. They you made lay down at your feet. Yisa, and he carried, or he lifted up. Medab Berothecha, and this is used as your speech or your teaching. But it's just interesting that it goes from the third person perfect talking about God to the third person talking about someone other than God, and now to the second person.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just really strange, and it's really hard to follow. So the saints here and the peoples, I mean, would be the peoples of Israel, because they're the ones who were at the foot of Sinai. The Wahaim, Tukku Raglecha, the Haim here would be the Israelites, who were called the Chedoshav, the saints, his saints, and they laid down or incline. This is an interesting word. The word Tukku is actually a pu'al, and it comes from the word taka'a. And we actually have this word in Arabic. It's used more often in Arabic than it is anywhere else. I don't even think it's in Aramaic, but it is in Arabic. For instance, when it talks about the people reclining at a feast, it says muttaki'in. This is this word, muttaki'in, from taka'a, which means to recline. And that's what it means. They were caused to recline or to lay down at your feet. And then it says, Yisa. And he lifted up your words. But anyways, it's kind of hard to follow who's being spoken of here.
Mm-hmm.
But the next verse is verse 5. Or actually verse, is that verse? Yeah, that's verse 5. Torah siwalanu Moshe Morasha Kehilat Yaakov. So a Torah Moses commanded to us an inheritance of the congregation of Yaakov.
Uh-huh.
Yeshurun Melech, and he was a king in Yeshurun. Yeshurun is a poetic name of Israel. Bihit at Seif.
Torah, by the way, just to go back, Torah Tzivalanu Moshe, Morasha Kilat Yaakov. That is it's been a while since I've been in a rabbinical shul. That's what the rabbis say. They always sing it. Torah Tziv. We learned that when we were in Hebrew school when we were little kids. Torah Tzivalanu Moshe. I think they say it when the Torah comes out or when the Torah goes back. I think when the Torah comes out.
Yeah, the Hakham, where they lift it up and dance it around.
That's where it is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and everybody kisses their
I should go back to the synagogue at least for a little every so often. It's relaxing sometimes. Yeah. All right. Let's see here.
That's how they magically recharge the sacredness of their tzitzit.
Right. By touching the Torah. Yeah, I got you. But hold on a second. 1 second here. Let's do this. Let's do this. Torah. 1 second. Torah. Sila Lanu Moshe. Let's do this. This the one? I hope this is the tune.
Yeah.
Yeehaw! My friend in Texas over there. All right, go ahead, Yaakov. I hope that doesn't get our video flagged for copyright violation, as it did last time.
Don't worry.
That's what happened. Seriously, we played a song in the background. The next thing you know, flagged, copyright violation.
Oh
All
man.
right. Torah ציווה לנו משה מרשה, קהילת יעקב, verse 35. Yeah, go ahead. Put this softer. Uh-huh.
Poetic name of Israel. When he gathered together the heads of the people, or heads of a people, the United Tribes of Israel. Yisrael. So now you actually get to the blessing. Let Reuben live and not die. He mithav mispah, and let his men mispah.
So Matei Mispar usually means little in number. Right? Hello?
The word mat here is
Yaakov, I'm having a lot of trouble hearing you.
The word mat, I think means people. I could be wrong. This is from matim, and this is the word mat, which would be actually the root. And so you have mitav, which means his people. Mitav, which means a number or a reckon. Did Melech leave?
I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I think he got booted off or lost connection.
Yeah, he said he was having trouble hearing you.
Yeah, he's got bad internet connection over there where he's at.
Oh,
Okay. He's coming back.
All right.
There he is. Now he's sideways.
I'm sideways. Oh,
yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the way it's gonna have to be.
That's okay.
And also have my head massager on, so don't mind me.
Yeah, those are good. Man, it gives me a goosebumps.
Well, what this is doing actually is I can use this. I receive prophecy through this. See, if I go like this.
Oh man.
It's like I ran out of tinfoil, so I'm using this instead.
There you go. So
whatever works.
So the mithav, mispar, mithav comes from math, which means people. And which I think is also an Aramaic word, but I can't really remember.
Well, Matei Mispar means little in number, right? You're not rendering it that as the translation?
No.
Okay, so how do you see it?
So it just says, "Let Reuben live and not die, and let his people be counted."
I'm looking at a bunch of different translations here, and we got, for almost all of them, again, just because you have English translations doesn't mean it's right, but almost all of them are saying something along the lines of, wait 1 second, what happened here? Oh shoot, 1 second. Let me just get my headphones on. Almost all of them are saying something along the lines of, let Reuben live and not die, nor his people be few, or though his people are few.
Yeah, the word that they're translating as his people is Matei, or Mitav. This is from Math.
No, Matei means, like, Matei Mispar is a phrase which means few in number, right? It's mentioned, it's mentioned in the phrase when we say that we spoke about a couple of weeks ago, Aramio Ve Davi, right? I think it mentions there something very similar.
Yeah, but the few of people, the people is actually the math part there. Hang on, I'll get to it. 26. 26. 26.
Oh, let's see here. Let's go to the. Let me do this. Let's go to Hebrew directly.
3s.
6. 33:6. What? Matei Mispar 34:30. Yeah, there's a bunch of places where it appears. Matei Mispar.
Mispar is number. We're talking about the word math.
Right. Right.
That means people.
Right. But I would claim that Matei Mispar is the same idea or the same concept as Matei Ma'at, which appears in Deuteronomy 26:5, Deuteronomy 28:62. It's basically the same phrase, Matei Mispar, Matei Ma'at.
Me'at means little. Matei means
Right.
people. People.
No, I know that. But what I'm saying is, no, I'm not. I'm saying that I understand that. But what I'm saying is, Mispar is the same. Is the phrase Matei Mispar is the same as Matei Ma'at?
Okay.
All right. Well,
I don't care.
Okay.
However you understand it, it's fine.
Well, it's not just my understanding. It's a lot of the English translations happen to agree with it. Not that makes it right,
I don't
but
really
they
care.
just. I know you don't. I'm also curious to go to. Let's go to. What's his face?
Robert Alter.
The Robert Alter. And
what Robert Alter says, he will decide for us.
No, but he definitely, as you can see, he definitely has.
Yeah.
I'm just curious to see what he says.
He evidently knows more than Yaakov.
Let Ruvain. He's very, very smart when it comes to stuff. Let Ruvain live and not die, though his menfolk be but few. That's how he translates it. And let's see if there's a footnote to that. These urgent words, more prayer than blessing, obviously reflect the moment in early Israelite history when the tribe of Ruvain, inhabiting territory east of the Jordan, habitually threatened by marauders, perhaps also in the process of being swallowed up by neighboring God, appeared to run the risk of extinction. Okay, this is interpretation. So, anywho, so I'm just going to go back here. Yeah. Okay, so we can go on. You've expressed your opinion. I've expressed my opinion. Now we move on. All right. So we're into Deuteronomy 30. We're in verse 7.
Yeah.
Right?
Zoth
Okay.
Lihuda. Wayuma. Shema Adonai Yaqul Lihuda. Wa ila ammo tavi'innu. Yudav Rav Lo. Wa Aizer Mitzarav Tihye. And this is for Yehuda. And he says, listen, O Adonai, to the voice of Yehuda, and to his people, bring them.
Right. So what does that mean?
I don't know. Anyway.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I'm going back to.
Enough for him. And be a helper against his those who distress him. Is the rest of that. Are you there? Uh-oh. Is anybody there?
Yeah, I'm here. I'm just muted because I'm over here opening chip bags and.
Hello.
Yeah, I hear
Hello.
you. We hear you. We see you waving.
Okay.
Can you hear us?
You hear me too?
Yeah.
So,
We just lost you again.
What's his face? All right. Is it better now?
Yeah. No,
Better now?
Yep.
Okay. There's a problem with the internet here. I went to the cell service. Okay. So Jeffrey H. Teague plausibly suggests that the reference is to bring him, meaning Judah, back safe for battle. That's right. So, for whatever it's worth. So, okay. So that's the explanation of El Amo Tivieno, which again is kind of hard to understand. All right, go ahead, Yaakov. Verse 8.
Well, it could be when it says Oyomar, Shema Adonai, Kul Yehuda wa Il Amo. It could be that Il Amo is a part of the Kul Yehuda. Listen to the voice of Yehuda and to his people.
Mm-hmm.
But still, this is a Hifil form. It's also a Jusuf.
Mm-hmm.
To the end, bring them, and that I still don't understand. But anyway, his hand shall be enough for him, and a helper against his distressors, those people who distress him, or enemies, you shall be. So, verse 8. Uli Lewi Amar Tumecha Urecha Laish Hazidecha Asher Nesitho B'masa Terivehu Al Me Mariva. And to Levi or Levi, he said, your perfections and your lights.
Well, no, that's speaking about the Urim and Tumim. You don't think so?
Well, what is that? What is the Urim and Tumim?
The Urim and Tumim are the things on the breastplate of the Kohen, right? And this is the tribe of Levi. I mean, the stones, probably.
Okay. I'd say they're the stones too. But
I think so.
Your Tumim or perfections and your lights. Leish Chasidecha is for a man of your Hasid, which means the righteous, or actually the word Hasad means to shake, means to be fearful. But I think this means someone who is righteous, whom you've tested him at with a test. You have Terivehu, which means to basically you had a dispute.
Struggle with?
Yeah,
dispute with.
At the waters of Mariva.
So why is, I guess, why are they singling out Levi for the waters of Meribah? I don't remember there being something specific about Levi, except unless we're talking about how Moses did not, oh no, that's one of Levi. Yeah, so what does May Meribah have to do with the tribe of Levi?
I have no idea.
Maybe we should go back there and take a look if there's any reference to the tribe of Levi.
The implication is that it was at the waters of Meribah where the tribe of Levi was actually chosen to be put in place of the firstborn. But the reason why actually goes a little bit further back to Sinai, which is where it says that when Moses came down with the law the first time, of course, you had the people rebelling against God with the issue of the golden calf. And
okay, let's take a look very quickly. It's Exodus 17.
Mm-hmm.
17.
Oh, somebody's trying to join with an iPhone. I don't know who iPhone is.
Okay.
Mr. iPhone. Mr. iPhone, welcome.
is always instead of iPhone, how about win a free iPhone?
There you go. Win a free.
Okay, let's see here. Moses said desert sin. Moses, what they quarrel with me. Okay, I'm just going to read very quickly in English. It's the NIV translation. The whole Israel, this is Exodus 17. The whole Israelite community set out from the desert of sin, travel. Oh, that's probably bulky, the iPhone, I would imagine. Traveling from place to place as the Lord commanded. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink, so they quarreled with Moses and said, give us water to drink. Moses replied, why do you quarrel with me? Why do you put the Lord to the test? But then Moses, and they said, why did you bring us up out of Egypt to make us and our children and our livestock die of thirst? And Moses cried out to the Lord, said, Moses, go out in front of the people, take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with you, which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand there before you by the rock at Horeb, strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink. So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled, and because they tested the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? And that's it. So I guess the only thing it has to do with the tribe of Moses, with the tribe of Levi, is that they argued with Moses. Is there any other connection that you can think of?
Not at all. The implication is that they were tested at Meribah, but they weren't the ones who were complaining about the water. And you know, there was, I can't remember where it was, but Moses said, whoever's for God, come to me. And it was the tribe of Levi who came. And at that time, there was 3,000 Israelites who were killed. And this is what we're about to read here in the next few verses, where it says he didn't recognize
one second here. So it's also recounted in Numbers 20. So let's look at that very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Numbers chapter 20. In the first month, the whole Israelite community arrived at the desert of Sin. They stayed at Kadesh. Then Miriam died and was buried. Now there was no water for the community, and the people gathered in opposition to Moses and Aaron. They quarreled with Moses and said, if only we died when our brothers fell dead before the Lord. Why did you bring the Lord's community into this wilderness that we and our livestock should die here? Why did you bring us up out of Egypt to this terrible place? On and on and on. And now it has to do with these were the waters of Meribah, where the Israelites quarreled with the Lord, and it's proved holy among them. So in verse 9, this is Numbers chapter 20, verse 9, it says, so Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he commanded it. He and Aaron gathered the assembly together in front of the rock, and Moses said to them, listen, you rebels, must we bring you water out of this rock? And Moses raised his arm and struck the rock twice with the staff. Water gushed out, and the community and their livestock drank.
And
the
that
Lord said to Moses,
was what caused him and Aaron both not
right.
to enter the land of Israel. And I'd like to point out something before you continue. It was at this point. Now, when we see the situation of the golden calf, Aaron was the one who actually made the golden calf, even though he lied later and said, hey, I just threw it in, and that's what came out. But he was left in charge by Moses, and he led the people. He actually said tomorrow is going to be a hag for God about the golden calf. Instead of being punished, Aaron was actually at that time made the Kohen Gadol. Later, him and Miriam both complained against Moses and questioned his prophethood, and God interjected. At that time, he wasn't punished either. Miriam was punished with leprosy, but Aaron wasn't, even though he was also implicated in that complaint. Here we see an action that was actually done by Moses, and Aaron was being punished for it. So for the first two times, he wasn't punished, even though he should have been. But for this, he actually didn't do it. Moses did the action, and both of them paid the penalty for it. So I always thought that was pretty cool. Well, pretty.
Wait a second. Is the account in Numbers 20 where it mentions the waters of Meribah? Is this the same as the account in Exodus 17 where it calls them the waters of Massah and Meribah? Right? hold on a second. Is this the same account, or is this two? It must be the same account, right? And they called the place Massah and Meribah because the Israelites quarreled because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?"
Yeah.
It's the same thing. So it's recounted here in Numbers 20.
Mm-hmm. And so the implication from the verse is that the Levites didn't complain. Just like when the incidents happened where Moses says, whoever is for God, come to me. And it was the Levites who actually came. No one else came. And it was because of that act that the Levites were chosen instead of the firstborns of Israel. So whereas the firstborns of all the other tribes were supposed to be a priestly class, they actually forfeited that right, and it all went to the Levites. They ended up being the ministers in the Mishkan instead of the firstborns of Israel. And then the next part of this, you'll see where it talks about he said to his father and his mother, I don't see them, and to his brothers, I don't recognize, and to his sons, he doesn't know. Lo Yadah. Because they kept your word and your covenant, yin soru, which is a synonym of shamar, which means they preserved it.
Right.
And so this is where Moses says, this is in verse 10, Yoru mishpatecha li'Yaakov. They shall instruct
we didn't do verse 9 though. We didn't do verse 9.
That's what I just read.
We didn't do verse 9.
That's what I just read. Ha'omer li'aviv u'limo.
You did? I guess I did.
Yeah. The one who said the one who said to his father and to his mother, Lo Rathiti, I don't see them. I don't see him.
So how do you
and he didn't recognize his brothers. The hakir is what they use for when it says when you're judging, you not to recognize the faces.
Right.
Lo Yadah, and to his sons he didn't know. It means he didn't know his sons. He didn't recognize his brothers, and he even refused to look upon his mother and father, which means he rejected everybody but God himself.
Or not necessarily rejected, but what it means is that first and foremost, he would listen to God's word, and not even if the words of his mother or father or brothers or children disagreed with God's word, then first he was loyal to God's word. I think that's the implication here.
Yeah, that's clear from the last part of the verse where it says, Ki shamiru imratecha, for they kept your word or your speech, what you said, u verithecha yinsoru, and your covenant they preserved, they kept. So whatever happened at Meribah or Massah, the implication here is that they didn't complain. They didn't join in with the rest of the Israelites in the rebellion or whatever. So, Yoru mishpatecha li'Yaakov. So let them teach. This is Yara, which is where we get the word Torah. Hello.
I'm here.
Yeah. No, someone said hello, so I'm saying hello back.
Oh, it's a bit faulty.
So let them instruct your judgments to Yaakov, وَتَوْرَثَيْخَ لِيِسْرَائِل, and your Torah to Israel. Yasimu kitorah be'apecha, let them set kitorah, which is incense or something burnt, which I would think this is the incense, in your nostrils.
Yeah.
وَخَلِيل al mizbahecha, and the Khalil is the complete burnt offerings upon your altar.
Mm-hmm.
Barech Adonai Hilo, Upo'al, Yadav, Tirtse, Mechatz Mofnaim, Kamav, U Misana'av, Min Yachmecha, Min Yakumun. Excuse me. And so it says, I don't know why people write me when they know I'm here. Okay, so Barech Adonai Chelo, Adonai bless his strength or his army, if you want to look at that. Chel is a military branch. But it says, bless his strength, U'fo'al Yadav Tirtze, and let the Po'al, which is the actions of his hands, please you, or be pleased with the works of his hands. Mechatz Mofnayim Chamo. Mechatz means to basically to like divide. I guess you would say like to strike or something, strike off or strike in half. The loins of those who stand against him, and those who hate him, and from those who again rise up against him, those who Yakamun, who are rising up. Any comments on that?
יהוה חילו, פועל ידיו תרצה, מחץ מותניים קמיו, ומשנאיו מן יקומון. Let's see, any comments? No, I don't have any comments at this point.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Levinyamin Amar Yadid Adonai Yishkon Lavetach Allah Chofef Alav Kul Hayom Uvein Chetefa Shachem. And he said or for Benjamin, he says Yadid Adonai, which means the beloved of Adonai.
The same root as the word David.
Yeah, and interestingly,
or the same root as interestingly, the same root as his son Shlomo, who is also known as Yedidiah.
That's what I was about to say.
Right. So it's interesting that Yedidiah, right? We don't, in Jewish tradition, the son is not usually named after the father, but Yedidiah is, in a certain sense, the name after his own father, David, because it both comes from the same words, which is Dalid, which the root is Dalid, of Dalid, or maybe just Dalid, which means friend, beloved, etc. So Shlomo is actually named, David Jr. in a certain sense. Instead of David, it's Yedidiah.
So it says, Yadid Adonai Yishkon Levetach. The beloved of Adonai, let him dwell in safety. Betach. Alav, which means with him. Let him dwell with him in safety.
Yeah.
Chofef Alav Kul Hayom. Cover him all day. Uvein Chetefav Shachem, and dwell between his shoulders.
So the word chofef, let's bring it up here. In modern Hebrew, chofef means to shampoo. That's what it really means. Ani chofef.
Yeah, it means to cover or to shield or to enclose.
One second here. Let's get a little more understanding of this word chofef. Enclosed, round cover. And it only appears once. This is a hapax legomenon.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it means enclosed, around, or cover.
Shampoo him all
Maybe
day.
it doesn't. Shampoo him all day. Let's go to Robert Alter on this one. Just out of curiosity. Well, he gives a lot of insight to me. So this is 33:12. So here, between the shoulders, counting by Rashi and others, making it into the proximity of troublemaker. This is especially because this poem does not envision central sanctuary. Okay, so actually he doesn't mention it at all. He shelters him constantly. Okay, that's how he translates it, as shelters him constantly, and between his shoulders he dwells. Alrighty. Okie dokie.
Okay, so we're on 13. So if you want to take over for a minute, I gotta go do something.
Sure.
I'll be right back.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. I guess what I would like to point out before we even go on is the order of the blessings here. So Reuben is first. That was his firstborn son, right? That was also the first person who got the first blessing in Genesis. Let's bring up Genesis 49 for a second. Genesis 49. So Reuben is first. Then Shimon and Levi are next in Genesis 49. Here in Deuteronomy 32, after Reuben, Shimon and Levi are left out, and we go straight to Yehuda. And as we've seen many times before in the Tanakh, order matters, right? Usually the most important ones, not always, but the most important ones come first, or it would be the order of birth. In this case, if we were to go by the order of birth, it would be Reuven, then Shimon.
Yeah.
And Shimon is not mentioned here at all. Or, I won't say at all, but he's not mentioned yet. And so here we skip right to Yehuda. And then after that, then we go to Levi. So Levi is the third born from Leah. And then after that, then we go to, where'd we go? Hello. Then we go to Binyamin and Yosef. Now we skip right ahead to the two sons of Rachel in reverse order, right? Yosef was born first, and then Binyamin was born afterwards. So this seems to be following. Reuben does retain the first place because he was the firstborn, but after that, it seems to be, I guess, kind of in order of importance, somewhat.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So
Makes sense.
yeah, the Binyamin, Amar, Yedid. Oh, we read that one already. Yosef. So now we're up to Yosef. Yosef Amar Mivorechet Yehovah Artso. Mineged Shemayim Mital. Oh, the ones for Yosef are always very difficult. They're always straightforward. So let's see what we got here. Yosef Amar Mivorechet Yehovah Artso. May his land be blessed by Yehovah. That's how I would translate that. Mineged Shemayim Mital Umitahom Rovetzet Tachat. From or in opposition or standing across from the sky, we say, be blessed from the sky, from the heavens. Mital, dew, from dew. Tal is dew, and that's always a blessing, right? Tal is the sign of abundance, even in dry times. mitahom rovetz tachat, and from the depths that rovetz. How would you say that in English? Rovetz is that wander below or lay below, I guess you would say. Something along those, swarm below, something along those lines. Let's see how to translate it here. This is Deuteronomy 13. Unless we can show the 13 that lie below. Okay.
Yeah, they
So
got
basically,
his laying like stones or something. Yeah, lie. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, so maybe be blessed from the. Basically, it's a blessing from the sky, right? Mineged Hashemayim, from the sky. Mital, that's on the earth. So that's a blessing from the earth. Mitahom rovetz tachat, and from the depths of the sea, I guess, or maybe it means like like the primordial tahom that's spoken about in Genesis chapter 1. But at any rate, there's a blessing here from the sky, from the earth, and from the depths below. In other words, may Yosef be blessed from all of the different directions. Verse 14. Mineged tvot shamesh umineged geresh yerachayim. So from, literally mineged means, mimeged. It's not mineged, it's mimeged. Hold on a second. Let's look up this word meged. This is not a very common word. Close this off, meged. Excellence. It only appears, it appears a bunch of times. Megadav. It appears in Deuteronomy 33 in these verses a bunch of times. And then it appears in Song of Songs, chapter 4, verse 13, in Pri Megadim, Kefarim, Im. So, and that's translated, Pri Megadim is translated as choice fruits. Yachab Pri Megadav, choice fruits. So this word seems to mean choice or excellent. Let's see here. Excellence of choice things. It doesn't appear very many times, but it appears far more than one time. Okay, so let's go back here. So, if we go back to verse 13, not mineged, mimeged, to Yosef he said, Mivorachet Yehovah artso mimeged shemayim, from the best of the heavens, mital, dew, umitihom rovetz tachat, and from the depths that lie below, mimeged tvot shamesh, from the best, or for the excellence of the produce of the sun, mimeged geresh yerchaim, and yerchaim, and so geresh is another one of these words that's not very common, but let's look it up. So ligaresh means to throw out or to kick out. So geresh, I guess, means, again, it's another word for the produce. Let's look it up here.
A horn or something. No. Yeah, geresh is something that's...
So that's a hapax legamenon.
Yeah, that would be something that... geresh.
They translate it as produce. And let's see what...
Yeah, thing put forth, yielded, produced, or thrust forth. That's how I got it defined here.
Interesting word megid we have also in Arabic as majida, which means to be honorable, to be noble. And that's where you get the word Al-Qur'anul Majid, which means the noble Quran.
We also have, in Hebrew, is the word nagid, which may be related to it. I'm not sure if that's a later word or if that's a biblical word. I don't remember offhand. At any rate, Geresh appears only once in Deuteronomy 33:14. Mr. Right here. Mr. Alter translates it as bounty. So that's the way he sees it, and with no footnote. So, okay, I guess that's the consensus. That means the bounty or the produce.
The produce of the sun and the noble or the precious gifts of the moon. The produce of the moon. Yeah, that would make sense because you actually see a similar thing in the Psalm. Where is that at? The things that are brought forth from the sun and the things brought forth from the moon. I think they use the word tevuah in both. Tevuah shemeth and tevuah yareach.
If you can find that, offhand, we should check that out.
Yeah, give me a minute. Let me see if I can find that somewhere.
And also, I've always wondered about what does it mean, the crops of the moon? What does that even mean? Are there crops that grow by the moon, or does the moon somehow help crops grow? I've never understood.
Well, as a farmer, I could kind of shed some light on that. There are some plants that have a more optimal growing season, so to speak. If you plant it in accordance with particular things in the moon, you can find that information in your farmer's almanac. They'll tell you to, like rosemary, for example, they'll tell you, now this ain't, verbatim, but I'll just put an example out. It may or may not be true, but just as an example, because I don't know off the top of the head, but like rosemary on the waxing gibbous, you know what I'm saying? The day after a waxing gibbous moon, you plant rosemary, it'll have a more optimal, whatever the case may be. Or I don't know, let's say an apple tree on a waxing crescent, you know what I'm saying? Like it's supposed to, according to the farmer's almanacs, they're supposed to have better conditions for their growing, depending on the phase of the moon that they're planted in the previous night.
Interesting. Wow, you're a farm. What kind? You're a farmer. What do you grow?
Right now I'm waiting on my melon patch to finish up so I can get my pumpkins and stuff. But we got a fruit orchard. Vineyard, just
wow.
And we're dealing with animals, mainly like fowl, chicken, guinea fowl, ducks, a couple goats here and there, and a couple donkeys. We're still relatively small scale, but we're trying to do it.
That's really cool. And you're in Texas?
I am, yeah.
Oh wow. What part of Texas approximately, if you want to say? Just curious.
East Texas. I'm closer to Dallas than anything. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And you have contact with the Qara'im community there, or?
None whatsoever.
Right? Yeah. You're not a Qara'im. I forgot. You're not a Qara'im.
Well, I'd like to, but I don't know what all the
right.
I don't know what all the requirements are, because don't get me wrong, I am a professing Muslim, but at the same time I understand that without the Torah you don't have an Islam. So
you're a Muslim?
If any, I am, but without the
interesting.
without the Torah, you don't have an Islam. You don't have a Quran. So I feel like it behooves any Muslim to learn the Torah.
Right.
So here I am.
Interesting. Wow, I've spent a lot of time in Muslim countries, so I actually, unlike most Jews, I actually have quite an affinity for Islam.
I ain't mad at it, and even then, I understand a lot of the grapes too. I get it. I've been kicked out of as many masjids as I've been into because of my position. So,
your position, meaning, what do you mean?
Just like I stated before, simply that in order to understand the Quran, you need the Torah, and that the Hadith are nothing but the commentary of madmen, if you ask me.
I got you. So are you kind of like what they call a Quranist?
Yeah, more of a Quranist than anything, and that's not really looked highly upon. Mainly out here, there's a lot of there's a lot of Sunni Muslims out here, and I run into a lot of flack with them, simply because they're Yeah, like I'm like look, man. The Quran is the Quran. The Sunnah, do with it what you want. The Hadith, you do with them what you want. But I'm sticking to the Quran. Like the Sunnah and the Hadith got people putting water up their nose and stuff like that for the for the ablution. But all that's required is hands up to the elbows, the wiping of the head, and the washing of the feet to the ankles. That's it. You know.
So, are you officially part of the Quranist community, or you're just your own thing?
Nah, I'm on my own right now. You know, I'm on my own right now.
I guess
I haven't found where I am. Like, you're either gonna be Sunni, Shiite, and if you are a Quranist, then 9 times out of 10 you're by yourself.
Got it. Kind of like Karaites.
Yeah, exactly.
You're either gonna be Sephardi, Ashkenazi, or if you're Karaite, you're on your own.
Exactly.
Pretty
You
much.
know,
It really is. Yeah, it's a lonely road.
I would actually, like to consider myself a Karaite in the fact that without the Torah or without the Tanakh, period, you don't have anything else. Like, there's nothing in terms of Abrahamic, the Abrahamic caveat, if you will.
I mean, a lot of the Quran is actually basically a commentary on the Torah.
Exactly.
It's really what it is to a large degree.
Exactly. To a very large degree. And I've tried to explain this to so many people. Like, man, look, they'll even tell you to go back and read the book. They'll go tell you, go back and study the book. If you don't believe me, go study the book, So it's
right.
That's actually two verses in the Quran. There's 2 verses. Both are basically talking about the same thing. One is in the singular, and the other one is in the plural. And the one in the singular is إن كنت في شك مما أنزلنا عليك من آياتنا فاسألوا أهل الذكر إن كنتم تعلمون, or something like that. It says basically, if you're in doubt of the verses that we send out upon you, and this is talking to Muhammad himself. He says, and ask those people. Oh yeah, it says فاسألوا الذين يقرؤون الكتاب من قبل. Then ask those who are reading the book before you. And the only book that came before the Quran was the Torah.
Exactly.
And for the rest of the Muslims, it says if you have doubt, then ask the people of the dhikr, which means the admonition or the remembrance, and that is talking about the Torah as well. That's specifically in the Quran that God gave Moses the Torah, which is a dhikrul lil alamin, which is a admonition for the world. So yeah, I find it really, really interesting that it says if there's any doubt about anything in the Quran, then ask the children of Israel.
Yeah, but I'm sure there are many Muslims who interpret those verses as
different. Very differently.
Oh yeah. No, there are Muslims that'll tell you that the Torah was corrupted, so they were given the Quran as a replacement, and I don't buy that one bit. I don't buy that.
There's no place in the Quran that says that the Torah was corrupted. Not one
at all. Now I do see where there are people, like there are complaints of the writers, the quote unquote they changed the script or whatever. But every verse that I've read relating to that, it seems more like it's dealing with the rabbinical, the rabbinical stuff. If anything, if there's any indication of change, it's in the rabbinical tractates. Going from not boiling a goat kid in its own mother's milk to not being able to eat a cheeseburger.
As I always say, rabbinical Judaism was the first Reformed Judaism.
Somebody just sent me a message in WhatsApp with a photo. The photo had some kind of language in it that he couldn't read, evidently. But he didn't have the fonts for his computer to even recognize the script. So all I saw was a bunch of little boxes with X's in it. Like, Yaakov, what language is this? I'm like, I don't know. All I see is X's. Show up.
It's box language.
Yeah. It's from the what you call them in the Star Trek people, the ones in the cube.
The Borg.
The Borg, yeah, that's the Borg language.
That's the Borg, yeah, the cube language. Before the universe, there was the cube.
The Borg, man. Well, yeah,
Anyway.
that's what it is for me, Melech. To wrap that up, that's
Right.
my viewpoint. So yeah, here I am. Yeah.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, on that note, verse 15. Yaakov, you want to take it?
Verse 15. Okay.
Yeah.
מראש הררי קדם וממגד גבעות עולם. That would be, and from the top of the ancient hills, I would say. Merosh
Okay.
Harare would be mountains of old or of the east. Harare Kedem could be ancient or east, the eastern mountains. Umimered Givaot Olam. And of the majestic things, maybe that's where we get the word majestic from, anyway. Or of precious things of the ancient heights.
Which would then...
Or of the everlasting heights, if you want to say.
So that would then support the idea that Harare Kedem is ancient mountains, right? Not mountains of the east, because the parallelism there would be the ancient mountains and the eternal, or the everlasting heights, right?
Yeah, I would say the Olam here would be the ancient also. Kedem and Olam will be playing off each other, talking about the ancient hills.
I think so too. Yep. I think so. Because it doesn't say le olam or me olam.
Yeah.
Right. So olam just means basically. I think they translate
it could be either way.
Everlasting. Right.
Everlasting to everlasting.
Exactly. Right.
That would be the Kedem. Kedem literally means to be before something. Right. And the way it comes to the east is because back in ancient times, when you stand, the people used to stand facing the rising sun for their, whatever you want to call it, their daily rituals. And so the east at sunrise became the direction that is before you as you stand. So it's Kedem. That's why.
And that's why.
Right.
And
Simal is to the north.
That's right.
And Yamma would be the sea,
right.
which was what we call the Mediterranean Sea at the moment. So, and also the entrance to the Mishkan is in the direction of the Kedem. So, which is pretty interesting. So, anyways, east, but the word Kedem literally
you're facing
before something.
The entrance to the Mishkan is, if I remember now, when we visited the Mishkan last year, the replica of the Mishkan last year in Timna Park, it was that the entrance to the Mishkan is on the east. It's facing out to the east. So it's facing the rising sun.
Yep.
Okay, that's what it was then. Okay, I remember that the guide pointed out that it was the opposite of what most temples were in ancient times. So I guess most temples faced the
same
setting
direction.
sun.
No,
face the setting sun.
No. The temple in Egypt, all of them face the east, the rising sun.
Then maybe I'm forgetting what the guide said, but he did point out that the temple of the tabernacle, Israelite tabernacle, faced in the opposite direction of most ancient temples.
I don't know how he figured that, but all I know is the ziggurat, the entrance to the ziggurat is also to the east. That's because they used to worship the sun as the supreme deity.
Right.
What I read somewhere that the east was actually like considered the north or something like that to them regards. I don't know exactly where I read it, but I do recall reading in one of those Mark Smith, what's his name? Marcus Smith and Frank Moore Cross, one of those type of guys. They were saying that that the east was considered the north because of such the rising of the sun and whatnot.
No, it wasn't considered the north. The north is always the same direction. What it was is on the ancient maps, they had the east at the top of the map.
Yeah.
But it didn't represent a
Like
direction called
north.
north.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It's
I get
still
what
the
you're
same
saying.
direction. Today we make maps so that the north is at the top, and that the center of the map is normally Greenwich, I think, is how they got it. That's the prime meridian, which and then the equator. But in ancient maps, even in Muslim countries, the old like the Idrisi map, the east was actually at the top instead of at the right side.
Yeah, I see. I have no contention with that. I'm not sure if that's what they meant in their wording, but yeah, that's. I was just recalling what I had read some time ago.
Yeah. So where are we now? Verse 16, I think. Yeah, 16. This is an interesting one. Yeah. Umimered eretz umiloa uretzon shocheni Sinai tavotha lerosh Yosef ulekodkov Nazir Achiv. And of the precious things of the earth and its fullness, and Urezon Shochene Sine. Now it says Shocheni, but I think it should be Shochene. In this one it's Shocheni.
Yeah, I have Shochni also.
Yeah,
It could just be a poetic form of Shochen. Shochensne.
Yeah, but what it's talking about is in the good pleasure of, or the pleasure, the good pleasure, the exception of the one dwelling in Sinai, which is a bush. And we have to remember that the first time that God appeared to Moses was in the flame of a fire in the midst of a Sinai, a bush. Tabutha lerosh Yosef, let it come upon the head of Yosef and upon the crown of Nazir Ichav. Nazir means someone who has been separated of his brothers, or because the Nazir is one who has to separate himself from wine and the products of the grape, whether it's a grape itself, raisins, or any product of the vine. And the Kod is talking about the crown of the head.
See here, I think this is talking about the I'm sorry, Jacob.
We didn't hear
But
anything you
Nazir
said.
here just means the one who is separated from his brothers, right? It's,
All right, say it one more
second.
time. You were all garbled.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
I'm saying it's when it says Nazir here, it's not talking about the oath of the Nazir, referring to Joseph going down to Egypt.
Nazir just means to be separated. Someone separated.
Right.
The word,
Yeah.
the idea of the Nazirite comes from being one who separates himself from partaking of the wine.
Oh, right.
That's where you get the
agreed,
idea of Nazareth.
That's fine. I'm sorry. I thought you said something else.
So 17 Bechor Shoro Hadar Lo وقرني رئيم قرناو بهم عميم وينجح يحدا أفسي أرت وهم ربوت إفرايم وهم ألفي مناشي. So this is the Bechor, the firstborn of Shuro, of his bull or his flock or his herd, however you want to look at it. Hadar Lo is his Hadar is an honor or
Glory, honor.
glory. Yeah, is his
If you're to
glory.
translate as majesty.
Yeah, so the first fruit of his flock is his glory, and the horns وقرني رئيم is like a wild ox, I think. And the horns of the wild ox are his horns, or like his horns. So Bahim Amim, with them, he pushes people together. Afse Eretz, this word Ephes means to the edges or to the extremities of the earth. And what I find really cool about this idea of Ephes, it comes from the Old Sumerian, where you get the word Apsu, which is talking about the primordial water that surrounded the world. Yeah, so that's pretty interesting.
In modern Hebrew, Ephes is 0.
Yeah, it means nothing.
There's a word for.
Yeah. So it's talking about to the ends of the earth, which means where there's no more earth, to the point where there's no more earth. And when you look at a map, an ancient map, now according to the Tanakh, it says that Israel dwells in the middle of, or in the navel of the world. And when you set that on a map, it looks really cool because you can draw a circle around all of the actual landmass at that time. And there's water all the way around it.
So, by the way, it says,
all I hear is chickens. The last thing I heard, Melech, was by the way.
Something like this. How about now?
All right, now I hear you again.
Hello?
Yep.
All right. Yeah, the internet is very sketchy over here. Okay. And just to finish off the verse here, V'hem rivavot Ephraim, v'hem alfei Menashe, and these are the tens of thousands of Ephraim and the thousands of Menashe. And again, we note that Ephraim is placed before Menashe, and Ephraim is given tens of thousands, and Menashe is given only thousands.
Yeah.
Right? That switching of the hands that we saw at the end of Genesis.
Yeah. And that's pretty interesting because Manasseh was the firstborn.
Right.
Ephraim ended up with the birthright.
Yeah, we have the whole.
Now, according to the Torah, it says the firstborn is supposed to receive the double portion. Now, that's why Manasseh has two portions of land. You have half on the east of Jordan and the other half on the west side of Jordan. But here you have the River Zoth versus the Alafim.
If that were the case, then Reuben, who was the firstborn of Jacob, would have also received double portion. I don't think that's, I'm going to disagree with you on that one. I don't think that's the reason Menashe has 2 portions of land. It's just that he decided that, Menashe decided they wanted to stay on the other side of the Jordan. They didn't get I'm sorry. Menashe decided they wanted to stay on the other side of the Jordan. They didn't get a double portion of land. They just got a single portion. It just happened to be split into 2 places.
Okay.
That's my opinion.
So verse.
Because if so, then Reuben would also have Reuben, who was Yaakov's firstborn, right? First of all, the firstborn of Joseph. Well, I guess you could say all of Joseph's territory split into 3, and then Menashe got 2, and Ephraim got 1. But if that were the case, then you would expect Reuben to also have a double portion, which he does not.
No, Reuben lost
it's only on the other side of the Jordan. Well, then whoever got the birthright in his place. But also Menashe lost the birthright. Your point is Menashe lost the birthright, but he's getting a double portion. I don't see that here, because if that were the case, Reuben, who also lost the birthright, would also be getting a double portion, but he's not. So I think this is just, I think the fact that Menashe, half the tribe of Menashe decided to stay on the other side of the Jordan, happens to be the reason why they have 2 parcels of land. Not because of something having to do with the birthright. Just my opinion.
Find something real quick. Should not be there. Oh, I'm doing a search, but I'm spelling it wrong. It keeps coming back. It's not there. I'm like, I know it's there. I just got to learn how to spell.
It's there somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, I apologize. It's taking so long.
That's all right. I'll put on music. Let's see, what do we got here?
Mm-hmm.
Switch, I like this one. Yisrael, lo yano v'lo yishon, shoyme Yisrael. Hine lo yano v'lo yishon, lo yano v'lo yishon, shoyme Yisrael. Hine lo yano v'lo yishon, lo yano v'lo yishon, shoyme Yisrael. Hashem lo yivnei ba'is. Shalom lo v'navo, Hashem lo yishmor, Shok shok kachoy me, Hashem lo yivnei ba'is. Shalom lo v'navo, Hashem lo yishmor, Shok shok kachoy me, Hashem lo yivnei ba'is. Shalom lo v'navo, Hashem lo yishmor, Shok shok kachoy me, Hashem lo yivnei ba'is. Shalom lo yivnei, Hashem lo yishmor, Shok shok kachoy me. Hine lo yano v'lo yishon, lo yano v'lo yishon, shoyme Yisrael. Hine lo yano v'lo yishon, lo yano v'lo yishon, shoyme Yisrael.
Whenever ready, Yaakov. I was waiting for you.
Couldn't find what I was looking for.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't find what I was looking for.
All right. Go ahead.
Let's see. Where were we? We were on the Zebulun, I think. So, Wali Zebulun Amar Simach Zebulun Bisaytecha wa Yisachar Biohlecha. And he says into Zebulun, he said, rejoice, Zebulun, in your going out, and Issachar in your tents.
And the rabbis say, you know what the rabbis say about this?
I have no idea.
That this is their proof verse for why people should financially support them while they learn in yeshivas. Believe it or not, I think it's one of the proof verses. Because if you want to raise the big bucks, you better have many proof verses. But this is one of their main proof verses because they say that in ancient times there was an understanding between Zvulun and Yisachar. Zvulun would go out. Zvulun's territory is on the sea. In fact, today they have the northern coast of Israel is called not Azor. What do they call it again? I can't remember, but the territory of Zvulun it's called. I'm sorry, I just got to think of the word for myself. I can't remember what it's called, but it's named after Zvulun, like the area of Zvulun, like Haifa in that area is all called Zvulun. because that's where the territory was. And so it's right on the sea. So Zvulun went out to the sea, right? And Issachar, so Zvulun b'tzetecha, Zvulun in your goings out, and or you're going out, singular. But and v'Yisachar b'oalecha, and Issachar in your tents. So the rabbis say that Zvulun would go out and be merchants and raise money, and they would support Issachar, who stayed in his tents learning. So it was an understanding between Zvulun and Issachar. So the Charedim are Issachar. That's what they believe. But the Charedim who learn in yeshiva all day long are likened to Yisachar. They sit in their tents all day long. And Zvulun, and the ones who go out and work and support the yeshivas, those are likened to Zvulun. They're out, they're doing business, they're merchants, and they give their money to support Yisachar, who remains in his tents. And the rabbis understand tents to be referring to yeshivas. In fact, so much so that in Genesis chapter, let's see where it's going to be. I'm going to have to take a guess here. It's a story of Esau and Jacob. Let's go with 12. Nope. No, that was already, okay. Let's go with 18. Abraham, let's go with 21. Birth of Isaac. I'm sorry, it's going to be later than this. 25. A second here. No. 32. Really off. Okay, Jacob's fear of Esau. So let's go back one. 31. Jacob flees from Lavan. No, it's before this. 30. Then we'll find that Jacob. Birth of Joseph. No, it's before this. I'm sorry. I'm playing the Genesis musical chairs now. It's before this. 26. It's promised to Isaac. Isaac's Esau's wife. It's already Esau. Genesis 25. Two descendants. Jacob and Esau. Here it is. One second. One second. Here he is. It's Genesis chapter 25, verse 27. This is speaking about Esau and Jacob. So Yigdalu hana'arim, Wahi Esau, Ish Yodea Tzad, Ish Sadeh Yaakov, Ish Tam Yoshev Ohalim. So the translation of that is the youths grew up, or the children grew up, and Esau became a man who was knowledgeable in hunting, a man of the field. And Yaakov was a simple man who sat in tents. And the way the rabbis interpret this, so much so that until I became a Karaite, I actually thought that's literally what it meant, was that, can you hear me all right, or did it cut out again?
No, I hear you fine.
Okay. That the rabbis say that that where it says Yaakov ish tam yoshev ohalim, that they believe it meant that he sat in tents is a euphemism for yeshivas, that he sat and studied the Torah all day long. That's literally what they think it means. This phrase yoshev ohalim means sits in yeshivas and study the Torah all day long, right? And so much so they said that Yaakov went for 14 years to the yeshiva of Shem and Ever. I guess they ran a yeshiva. But so that's the idea where it says Yoshev Ohalim. Of course, what it means is sitting in tents. It means he was a shepherd. He didn't go out and hunt. He was a shepherd, right? But now if we go back to here, Deuteronomy 33, we have that same phrase exactly. Where do we go? Oops. There it is. 33. And so here, Zvulun Amar Smach Zvulun Betzecha v'Yisachar be'ohalecha, right? So Yisachar is in his tents, meaning Yisachar learns in yeshiva all day long, while Zvulun goes out to the sea and acts as a merchant around the Mediterranean Sea and brings the treasures back just in order to support Yisachar, who's sitting all day long in yeshiva learning. That's what the rabbis say.
Thank God for the oral Torah.
So listen, you got to have some good proof verses if you want to bring in those big bucks, This is one of them.
The more outrageous and outlandish the explanation, the more famous these people are, and the more people they
I
just
know,
draw
right?
to them. They just draw them to them. Come on, man, come on,
Yep.
and they all just suck it up. I don't get it. But anyway,
Is the verse really talking about those two tribes being like semi-nomadic or something, and they lived in tents?
Zvulun, B'tzeitecha, Zvulun was seafaring. That's already mentioned in the original blessings. First of all, it's mentioned in the territory that they got, but it's already mentioned in Genesis in the original blessing, if I remember correctly. Sometimes my memory fails me, but let's go to it for a second and look at the blessing for Zvulun in Genesis 49. And it's Genesis 49, 13. And it says, Zvulun will live by, I'm just reading the English translation, Zvulun will live by the seashore and become a haven for ships. His border will extend towards Sidon, right up north into Lebanon, into modern
So
day
they were
Lebanon.
traders just like the Phoenicians.
They were traders, yeah, exactly. That's exactly a good way to put it. They were traders. And that's
So they
why it
must have
says
dealt a lot with
here, what's that?
They must have dealt a lot with Phoenicians.
I guess.
well,
In fact, it mentions explicitly that the border will extend up to Sidon. Sidon was one of the Phoenician city-states, right? Maybe the first, second most famous.
Solomon had an agreement with Hiram,
Yeah.
and they had a fleet. They had two separate fleets, one on the Mediterranean Sea and one at Ezion Geber. And the one at Ezion Geber, we know, went around the coast of the Arabian Peninsula. And interestingly, it was the Phoenicians who first circumnavigated Africa. And but I believe that was the combined fleet of the Israelites and the Phoenicians. The Phoenicians first came on scene. Their kingdom first came about almost 300 years after the Israelites came into the land and took it over. And that's why there's many scholars who actually say that the Phoenicians, because they never called themselves Phoenicians, they called themselves Canaanites. But they surmise that the Phoenician kingdom was actually a northern Israelite kingdom. And but anyways, they were around 300 years after the Israelites entered into the land after the Exodus, and they actually started to disappear after the Assyrians came in and took the northern kingdom, and that's when they started spreading out, all over the place. And I think it was at that time that Carthage became their new main port, is because of that. And then the Romans came on.
Well, as you know, we visited Carthage in November 2018. Was it 8? Yeah, 2018. And Carthage had already been, and if you ever get a chance to visit Carthage or to visit Tunisia in general, I cannot tell you how much I recommend it. That's for anyone who's listening, not directed towards anyone particular here. But so Carthage grew as an important city-state. They say, if I remember correctly, it's been a while now, it was founded, they say, in the 8th century BCE, and it reached its height of importance in, now I have to remember, I think it was like the 2nd century BCE, but it had already been established. It was established as a city-state while the city-states still existed back on the Lebanese / Israeli coast. But then those city-states, as you mentioned, were basically conquered or disappeared, and the only one that really remained, because it was out of that area, was Carthage, and that's when Carthage really grew. Carthage grew to its height. And as I always like to point out, the word Carthage is in Phoenician, it was not called Carthage. It was called Kat Hadasht, which literally means the new city, Kiryat Hadashah, because it was a new city that was founded. It was basically a colony founded by Phoenicians. There's a whole legend that goes along with it, which is irrelevant right now. But it was a new city that was founded by the Phoenicians. So it was a Phoenician outpost on the north shore of Africa. So I don't know if it became the main. It became the main city-state. It became one of the main city-states of the Mediterranean, but I don't know if it became the main city-states among the Phoenicians because it was so far separated, and the Phoenicians really did not have an overarching structure. They were basically just city-states. They had connections with each other, but there was no Phoenician nation, so to speak.
One thing that I find interesting is that the Israelites, they came out of Egypt, but while they were in Egypt, it said that Pharaoh put over them Sarah Messim. Now, the word "mas" in biblical Hebrew is usually used as forced labor, but the word is actually Egyptian in origin, and it had to do with being stonemasons. And so, and that is why we see in the first chapter of Shemot that the Israelites were put to work building cities, and because they were expert stonemasons. And when you look at the land of the Phoenicians, what we call the Phoenicians, they have some of the biggest monuments of Baalbek. Now, of course, the modern archaeologists would argue that was Roman, but there's other people who point out that actually the Roman ruins are on top of the older ruins. And but the Phoenicians were known to be really great artisans and stonemasons, which is why they were employed in the building of the Temple of Solomon. And one point that Professor Genor pointed out: look, why would Solomon employ Phoenicians in the building of the temple when Ezra came back to rebuild it? He wouldn't even allow the Samaritans to take part in it. But Genor, he wrote a book about it, Who Were the Phoenicians, and I recommend that to everyone. But I kind of agree with him, but that's neither here nor there.
Okay. Well, one of the things about Carthage, to get back to that, is that Carthage was destroyed by the Romans. There were the series of 3 wars called the Punic Wars. Punic was the Roman name for Phoenician, right? So the Punic Wars, and it was basically Rome versus Carthage, and that's where you get the famous Hannibal, right? Who basically crossed into the Iberian Peninsula, and then went around and basically came on the doorstep of Rome and threatened to attack Rome with elephants and whatever. It's famous history, which we don't have to get into now. But so in the second, now I have to remember history again, but in the second, I guess the third Punic War, there were 3 Punic Wars. Carthage was basically razed to the ground. And if you go there today, all you see is, what remains of Phoenician Carthage is just, you cannot believe this was basically one of the 2 major cities aside from Rome of its times. It's just a bunch of rubble, a very small bunch of rubble is all that's left of Phoenician Carthage. But then, if I remember correctly, 1st century CE or so, maybe it was the 2nd century CE, the Romans rebuilt the city as a Roman city. And so when you go to Carthage today, when you go to which is right outside of modern day Tunisia, when you go to Carthage today, you will see Roman ruins all over the place. You could be, Volky will tell you, you're driving down the street and there's Roman ruins. There's a Roman pillar. There's a Roman capitol. There's Roman. It's actually used like almost as decorations these days, all over the place in Carthage and in Tunis. And so you have that situation there where the Romans rebuilt over this famous Phoenician city after they destroyed it. So I would imagine that happened in a bunch of Phoenician cities eventually, back on the coast of Lebanon and Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Anywho.
So, verse 19, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, 19. عميم حر يقرأوا شام يذبحوا ذبح صادق كي شافع يميم ينقوا وسفني تمني خول. It's really strange. But basically it says, peoples, a mountain they shall call there. Literally.
Mm-hmm.
But what they normally translate that as is they shall call people, peoples they shall call there to a mountain or something like that.
Well, let's see what Robert Alter says, shall we? You probably hate this guy already.
I don't care.
Peoples they call to the mountains. That's what he says. Most commentators understand peoples, amim, as a poetic designation of the tribes, but one cannot exclude the possibility that Zebulun and Issachar actually invited neighboring peoples to participate in their sacrifices. It is unclear what mountain the poet has in mind, though it would have been in the northern Galilee.
Mm-hmm. And they sacrifice, righteous sacrifice, for Shefa Yamim Yinaku, they shall suck the Shefa, which is like abundance of seeds. Usafune Timune Chol. Sifun, this is interesting because you have the scene here for Sifun that normally is written with a Sade. I think this is the only time it's actually written with a scene, but it means to be the hidden things. And
Right.
Sifon means literally hidden, but it's also used for the north.
Mm-hmm.
But Sifune means hidden things, and also Temune, which means secret things of the Hol, which is the shores of the sea, the Hol,
Mm-hmm.
or the sand. And it doesn't actually have to be of the sea. Hol is also used for the sand of the desert.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
Yep.
Ulighad Amar Baruch Morhiv Gad Kilavi Shechain Watraf Zeroa Af Qod Qod.
Mm-hmm.
And to Gad he said, blessed is the one, Marhiv Gad, which means the one is actually a causative participle, which means one who causes Gad to be enlarged. So he says, blessed is the one who enlarges Gad. He dwells like a lion, Lavi. He dwells. And Wataraf Zorua Afqad Qad. And he tears Zorua, which is an arm. Afqad Qad, also the crown of the head.
Mm-hmm. Basically rips his prey to shreds.
Yeah, there you go. Wayar Reshit Lo Kisham Hilqat Mahukech Safun Wayeth Rashi Am Sidqat Adonai Asa ومشبطاغ عن إسرائيل. So it says he Wayar Reshit Lo. Yar, that means he saw his beginnings. For their Kisham Hilchat Mehokek Safon, because there was the portion of Mehokek, which means a lawgiver, one who makes hok. Safun. Safun, I think, means seated. So it says, وَيَثَيَ رَشَيَ عَمَ, and he came with the heads of a people. The justice of Adonai he did, and his judgment is with Israel. Pretty strange.
Mm-hmm.
Ulidhan Amar, then Gur Aryeh. In fact, I think it's the same thing in Genesis.
For Yehuda, it's called Guri Aryeh.
Good. Okay, yeah. I remember it was there. Yizarnek min Habashan. And
he's also called, and Yehuda is also called Lavi.
Lavi,
In Lavi, from verse 20, he's also used to refer to Yehuda.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, that's our cat's name, Lavi.
So, and of Dan, he says, Dan.
By the way, can I tell you something funny?
Uh-huh.
If I never mentioned to you, my grandfather, who was secular but very interested, he was like kind of a Talmudic scholar. When I grew up, they had my grandmother and grandfather had two cats, and their names were Rambam and Rashi. And long before I ever was into Judaism, I mean, I went to Hebrew school, but long before I ever rediscovered Judaism, I always thought, Rambam and Rashi were, I mean, I knew they were names of rabbis kind of, because my grandfather told me, I guess, but I always knew Rambam and Rashi as cats, not as rabbis.
That's interesting. That's funny. So, and of Dan, he says, Dan is the cub of a lion. Aryeh is a lion. Yizanek means to jump or leap.
Yeah.
From Bashan.
Yeah. We could take a look at the Genesis 49 prayer for Judah, just to, I can find it here. It's one of my favorite. It's really my favorite blessing from chapter 49. So let's see here. Let me just bring it up in Hebrew. Genesis 49:8. You'll see similar imagery, which is not surprising because the lions were very common imagery throughout the Tanakh. But it says, Genesis chapter 9, 48. I'm sorry, 49 chapter 49, verse 8, talking about Yehuda. Right, 49:9. Let's go to. Gur Aryeh Yehuda, a lion's cub is Yehuda. Miteref bani alita. You have risen up from your prey. Kara ravat ska'aryeh. You bent down, you crouched down, and lay down like a lion. Kilavi, like a lion. Lavi is usually translated as another word for a lion, I guess, as a lion, or as a another type of lion. Mi yakimenu, who will dare rouse him? Who will dare cause him? Cause him to rise up or tempt him to rise up. So that's it. Also, Yehuda is called Mechokek in verse 10. Lo yasur shevet me Yehuda mechokek mi ben raglav. The staff shall not depart from Yehuda, and a lawgiver, nor a lawgiver from between his legs, meaning from among his descendants. It's a very similar imagery, right? Here we have. It's very weird, actually, because we're talking here about
the Gad, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about God. So Zvulun is, it's almost like God is getting Yehuda's blessing. It's very strange. Yad Reshit lo ki sham chakat mechokek safun. It's very strange. God was not a major figure, right? God was God one of the sons of one of the concubines? Now I can't remember. I always forget. Don was. No. Yeah, God. Wait a second here. God. Let's see here. No, he was Zilpah. He was the son of Zilpah. So God is not, the sons of the concubines are basically like secondary, they're considered like a secondary level. And here God is getting this super, basically getting a blessing that uses a lot of the imagery that Yehuda got, that Jacob used on Yehuda in Genesis 49. I don't have an explanation for it.
I don't know.
Mhm.
And that's the same way with all kinds of blessings. And you have people who
Right.
start looking at these. It's kind of like prophetic things, because the blessings of Yaakov, he says, "I will tell you what happened to you in the latter
Right.
time."
Exactly.
And so they said, well, it's kind of like a prophecy, and then they start looking at all these different things. I'm telling you, the it's so poetic that, and most words you'll see have only been used once ever, and so it's hard to really determine what is it actually talking about. And so you have
Right.
people jump around and start making all kind of crazy claims. And
Definitely.
me personally, I just look at it, okay, this is just a really good blessing for the children of Israel. I don't look at it
Right.
as prophetic or in any way, shape, or form actually meaning anything that other than they're going to be some good people with a lot of good blessings.
Well, there's clearly prophecy in for instance, in Genesis 49, because it predicts that Levi is going to be split up, right?
Yeah, it does say that.
Does it not?
Yeah.
Shimon v'Levi achim klei Hamas michorotehem, v'stom al blah 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 blah. Where is it? Arur afas ki az ve'evratam ki kashatam echalkem v'Yaakov ve'afitzem v'Yisrael. And that was long before Levi was chosen as the priesthood, and basically they were split up. They were not given territory, right?
Yeah, but that's pretty clear. I mean, you don't have to guess at what it means when it says let them be divided up amongst the tribes.
Yes, but the reason they were divided up amongst the tribes was not because Yaakov determined it in advance. It was because of Moshe. It was a fulfillment of prophecy that they were right. Moshe was chosen. He happened to be from the tribe of Levite, and then Moshe's brother was Aaron. Aaron was chosen because Moshe was not was not capable of speaking.
Explain to us all the other ambiguous things, then.
No, I can't. I'm
That's
just saying there is some
That's
prophecy.
clear.
Yeah.
It doesn't. There's things that are clear, okay, but whenever we start getting into the ambiguous things, no one is going to know, and that's what I'm getting at. I look at it, okay, this is just a blessing. That's fine. I don't try to put any more meaning to it than that.
Okay.
Whenever it has something clear, like when it talks about Levi here being the one who teaches the Torah to the Israelites, and who will have the Urim and Thummim and so forth, that we actually see in Torah, and that's clear. That's a clear language. That's not something that is so ambiguous that we have to guess at.
Sure.
And that's all I'm saying is, I don't look at it and try to figure out, oh, well, that meant that, all the other Israelites have to go out and make money while we sit in their tents and read Torah all day.
Sure. I got you.
That's pretty prophetic, and that's why the Hasidim do that thing, right? But that's all I'm getting at. You have lots of stuff in here that's only used once. And there's no way to determine a lot of the meaning. And even the old Karaite Hachamim recognize there's lots of stuff because of our exile we've lost. We don't know what they mean anymore. And so we have to be careful in those things. And that's why I'm really careful also in the prophetic books. When it's not clear, I don't make any assumptions. I just say, okay, it's interesting. I look at what it says, but I won't try to make an interpretation and try to fit it to my time, because you got so many things that are so ambiguous and so vague. You could pretty much fit it to any time and twist it to mean whatever you want. And that's me personally. I find that to be disingenuous. So Naphtali, Uli Naphtali, Amar, Naphtali, Siv'a Arson, Umale Birakat Adonai, Yam Udarom Yerasha. And of Naphtali, he says, Naphtali, Siv'a Arson, which means to be sated on goodness, Rason, or good pleasure. Umale Birakat Adonai, and full of the blessings of Adonai. Yam, which means the west. This is talking about the sea. Udarom, which actually means the south here. He shall inherit, which seems kind of strange. How does he inherit both the west and the south? But Uli Asher Amar Baruch Mibbanim Asher Yihiratsui Ichab Watovel Bashemen Raglo. And of Asher, and to Asher, he said, let Asher be blessed of children, Mibbanim. Baruch Mibbanim Asher. Yeah, let Asher be blessed of children. Yehiratzui Ichav, let him be acceptable of his brothers. Tovel Bashemen Araglav, and one who dips, Tovel is a participle, dipping his foot in oil. So I guess that means when we look at the land of Asher, there's actually oil
there. Maybe. I don't think so. Oh, you're talking about oil, like, okay, gotcha.
Barazel Unechosheth Min Arecha Uchiamecha Dov Echa. Na'al is a shoe, so it says of your shoe will be iron, and Nechoshet I think is bronze. So bronze and iron will be what your shoes are made from. Uchiamecha Dov Echa. Dov Deva I think is strength, and your days shall be, and like your days, strength or something. Your strength shall be like your days. Ein Ka'el Yeshurun Rochev Shamayim Be'izrecha Uviga'awatho Shehakim. There is none, it says Ein Ka'el. There's none like the El of Yeshurun. Cats fight. There's none like the God of Yeshurun. Yeshurun again is the poetic name of Israel. Rochev Shemayim, one who rides upon the sky with your as your helper, and his pride. Shehachim. Shehach is I think Shehach is also sky. Shehakim.
Hakim is sky. Yep. In modern Hebrew, a gorej Hakim is a skyscraper.
Wow. And in his arrogance, Gavah can also mean arrogance, but I think it means pride or something.
Right.
Or in his greatness of skies. Me'ona Elohei Kedem u'mitachat zira'ov olam ويغارش مبنيها أويب ويومر حشمي.
And by the way, Yigaresh, that gives insight into the word Geresh that we saw that
means to drive
Hapex
away.
Legamenon back in verse wherever it was. I don't remember the verse offhand.
Yep.
But right, it was translated as produce.
Yeah. Gerish.
Yeah, the outcoming, right? The thrusting out, the produce. So that's obviously where they get it from.
Could
That
be.
and the parallelism between Gerish and what was the other word there? It was the Gerish of the moon, right? Where was the first? Let's just find it for 1 second. Here it is, verse 14. Deuteronomy 33:14. Mineged tfuot shamesh. So tfuot is latzet. Mineged geresh yirachim. Right. So it's clear. I mean, I would say that although it's very hard to determine what these words that occur one time mean, but because of the parallelism with tfuah, right? And tfuah comes from lavo, right? So the coming, and it's usually translated as produce, but the coming out from the ground, and lavo, and here ligaresh, right? Again, is kind of coming out or coming or expulsion, right? So ligaresh means to expel. Geresh means the expulsion of the moon, meaning the produce produced by the moon, right? So I would say that in this case, it's kind of, that was a kind of a good, a reasonable guess to say geresh means produce, based on the parallelism with tfuah, and based on the fact that ligaresh means to expel, to kick out.
Yeah. So Me'ona is a dwelling place, or a source, actually. Me'ona Elohei Kedem, as a dwelling place, the god or the ancient god Elohei Kedem, or the gods of the east. And under the arm of the ancient one, he drives from before you enemies, and he says hash me, which means to be destroyed. In fact, that's what God said he would do, that he would destroy the enemies from before them. So וישכון ישראל בטח בדד עין יעקב אל ארץ דגן ותירוש אף שמיו יערפו טל. So he says, let Israel dwell in safety alone. El Eretz actually literally means to the land, to a land. But I think it would be more correct to say in a land of grain and new wine. And as well, Af, Shamav, his skies shall drop Tal, which is dew.
We saw Tal earlier, right?
Yep.
With Meged. With the Meged of Mina Shemayim, or Meged of Shemayim, and then the Meged of the Tahom Rovetzet Mitachat, right? In the middle was the Tal, the blessing of Tal from the earth. Earlier in this chapter.
So, where are we? Ashrecha Yisrael, mi chamocha, am nosha ba'adonai, magen Ezrecha, wa asher cherev ga'wathecha, ויקחשו אויביך לך, ואתה על במותימו תדרוך. It's interesting because that really hadn't happened. It happened for a short while, maybe once. The rest of it, they actually, it was just the opposite. So it says, Happy is Israel, who is like you, a people that's saved by Adonai. Magen Izrecha, which means the shield of your help. And who's Asher Cherev Gawatecha, and which is a sword of your pride or your excellency. It's talking about God, who's the sword of their pride.
Mm-hmm.
So we have Wayikahashu Oyevechelach. That means your enemies shall be submitted to you. And you shall tread upon their high places. And that's certainly what happened under Joshua.
Yep.
ויעל משה מערבות מואב אל הר נבו וראש הפסגה אשר על פני יריחו ויראהו אדוני את כל הארץ את הגלעד עד דן. And so Moses ascended from the plains of Moab to the mountain of Oh at the top of Pisgah. Now, Pisgah is the name of a mountain, but the word Pisgah also means summit. To the head of the summit, which is in the presence of Jericho. And Adonai showed him all the land, Gilad to Dan. وإذ كل نفتالي وإذ أرץ إفرايم ومناشي وإذ كل أرץ يهودا أد حيام هأخرون. So now this is really cool to think about. It says, and the God took him up to this, had him go up to this high place, and he showed him the land from Gilad to Dan, and it says from here, and Naphtali, and the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, and all the land of Judah until the Yam Ha'acharon, which means the sea behind.
Western Sea.
Western Sea, right. So this is
right, because we said before that the east is called Kedem, right? Because your people face, when they set the directions or when they looked out of their temples, they faced east. So they're facing forward. Ahead is Kedem, and also Kadima means to move ahead.
Acher. That's right.
And the west is behind them, and that means, Acher, behind. Right.
And
so that's the Mediterranean Sea it's referring to, obviously. Mm-hmm.
And so wherever
now,
Moses
it's interesting
was standing,
I just want to point out one more thing. It's interesting. It's not really that interesting, but it's a little point for thought that even though he's standing in the east, looking out towards the west, that the sea is still called the Hayam Ha'acharon, even though he's facing it. It's not behind him, it's in front of him. But it's still called Yam Ha'acharon. Really not very an interesting point, but I'd say it anyway. All right.
And so wherever it was he was standing, he was able to see all the way to Dan, Dan was at the northernmost part of the territory of Israel. And he was able to see all of Judah, the land of Judah, and he was able to see from there the Mediterranean Sea. And so this is from Jericho. So this is from the easternmost border of the land of their inheritance.
Right.
Okay.
So I wonder, I don't know if they found a mountain that would be one way to look for Moses' grave, if one was so inclined, would be to go across the Jordan River into modern day Jordan and look for a mountain where you can see all of these things, unless it really means that he showed it to him, through visions.
Could be. So, وإذ النجف وإذ كيكار بقعة يريحو عير التماريم ad So'ar, and also the Negev, which is normally called the South, but this is a point I asked earlier. And also the Kikar, which is talking about the plain.
Right.
The plain. The Valley of Jericho, the City of the Palms, all the way unto Zoar. And
Zoar was one of the cities that was, that's where Lot fled.
That's right.
When he left Sodom. And the Kikar is where Sodom was, right? It was the cities of the Kikar, the cities of these plains that were destroyed.
And I want to mention that
Yeah.
when we look in the story of when Abram and Lot separated, Lot chose the city of the plain, the Kikar, and that's where he dwelt. So he dwelt up unto Sodom. But it says Abraham remained in Canaan. And I always thought that was strange because everyone looks for Sodom and Gomorrah and all these cities of the plain. But how could Lot go somewhere and it say Abraham remained in Canaan? I don't know how. I don't care how you look at it. It makes it seem as if those places were outside of Canaan. It just from the word, the way it was worded. Anyway, Zoar was the place that Lot fled to.
Right.
And wherever it was,
Zoar means, and Zoar, the explanation given at the time for the naming of for the name of the city is Lot says, "Oh, it's just a little city," right? He says, I don't remember the exact words, Zaira or something like that, or Zaira, which means small, and so therefore the city is named Zoar. It's a tiny little city. Just leave this one city alone because that's where I want to go.
Yeah. So, ويومر أدونai إلى Zoth ha'aretz asher nishba'ti le'Abraham, Yitzhak, ve'Yaakov lemor, le'zara'acha itnenna hir ithicha be'anecha washamma lo fa'avor. And so Adonai says to him, "This is the land which I have sworn to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, saying, to your seed I will certainly give it. Hir ithicha be'anecha, I present it to you before your eyes."
Right.
However,
and again, this is interesting because it's heriticha is hereti. It's a past tense. It's a causative past tense, right? And yet it doesn't imply I've showed it to you. It implies
I've caused you to see it with your own eye.
Or I am causing you. I am now, behold, I am causing you to see it, is the implication here. So it's an interesting use of the past tense, right? To not express something that's happening in the past, but having something that's happening right now. So behold, I am causing you, or something like that. Or I have now caused you to see it with your eyes.
However, you shall not cross over there.
Right. Literally, and to there you shall not cross. Shama l'tachor.
וימות שם משה עבד אדוני בארץ מואב על פי אדוני. And Moses died there. Moses, the servant of Adonai, died there in the land of Moab, according to the P Adonai.
The word of the Lord.
Yeah, and this is what I always say. This word P is the construct of pay,
right,
which literally means a mouth. But when we see it, because we see it often, we see P HaTorah, P HaDavar, and so forth. It always means, in the way I look at it, is not necessarily the mouth, but it's the authority. It's what comes out of that mouth that really matters. ויקבור אותו בגיא בארץ מואב מול בית פאור ולא ידע איש את קברתו עד היום הזה. And he buried him. Now, good question. Now, the word kabar doesn't necessarily mean to dig in the earth and bury it in the earth. Normally, it just means to entomb someone, lay them to rest. And usually, the kabar was a cave. They didn't actually dig in the earth and bury you in the ground. They actually put you in a case. Originally, later it meant to actually dig a grave in the ground. But it's a different word.
Well, Sheol literally means pit, right? So, it implies that people were dug into the ground. I
Did they leave him in caves at that time? I thought that was only much later. They would leave in caves.
No,
Second
caves were the
temple period
first one.
times.
That's why Abraham bought a machpelah, which is the cave.
That's true.
And he
That's
said,
true.
I will entomb them there. Anyway,
That's a good point. Yeah.
so it says, and he, now this is singular, وَيَقْبُرْ أُوثُهُ. Now it implies only one person, and some people have suggested that God himself buried him.
Well, it's
Because
clear. Nobody else was there. He didn't bury himself.
And it's because, and the reason why is because it says there's no man who knows his grave even unto today.
Right.
Okay. And so it says he buried him in the valley of in a valley in the land of Moab. Now this is Gay or Guy, big guy. Guy means a valley, and this is where you get the word Gay Hinnom, the valley of nothing.
No, the Gehinnom is the valley of the sun. It's not called
Gay
Gehinnom.
Ben Hinnom is what it's actually called.
Yeah.
But the later they get this idea Gay Hinnom, which means hell.
Right.
But the actual word is Gay Hinnom, which means the valley of nothingness. But
It's the valley of it's the valley of the sons of Hinnom and it's right outside of Jerusalem. You can visit it today if you go there. And one can visit it today if they go there. This area, and Wolfie and I visited it. We were there. I'm not sure if he remembers. And it was the place where where children were being sacrificed to Molech.
Yeah.
And this is mentioned in. Where is it again? Mentioned in 2 Kings, I believe.
So Moses wrote about his own death here? It's believed that Moses wrote this part?
Why not?
The rabbis asked that question.
He said when Moses writes, to this day, no one knows where his grave is. What time is he referring to? What time? This day.
Yeah, it's whoever reads the book later, as to whatever time you're reading that statement.
Oh, so it's for eternity, whoever.
Yeah, nobody. Do you know where Moses is buried, Bilky? Then even to this day, all right. The point is, people such as Volky, who disbelieves in God or whatever and hates Moses and the Torah,
I don't
stone
hate
him and burn him at the stake. I'll make sure we call a what is that called? An inquisition. We need another inquisition.
Okay.
No, but anyways, the point is that he was a prophet, okay? And God had already told him he was going to go there and die. And so it says that he wrote the book to the end. It says that clearly. He wrote that book to completion, which means he himself wrote about it.
And it's referring to this same book that's being written,
what we're reading,
referring to itself.
Unless you have some other book you can present and show it.
Well, it probably was some other version without this part.
Well, I know you say Moses never existed, which means the book we have shouldn't actually exist either. Because it was all an invention.
It was by someone else.
It was all just an invention, right?
And I don't think it was an invention. I don't think so. I think
the point is, it says in the book itself that Moses wrote it to the end. And the Qaraites have always held that position that nobody else wrote in it. And they use that verse that it says when Moses wrote the book to its completion, then he wrote about his own death. And the idea is, why not? If we believe that he was a prophet, why not? God had already told him that he was going to die. So he finished it and said, well, after he's dead, this is what's going to happen.
But to this day, doesn't that suggest there's a specific point where they were expecting us to read it?
The book was supposed to be read all the time, all right? And so it doesn't matter which time you read it. No,
Volky's point is, it says until this day, but if Moses wrote the book, then
it just means,
right? You understand his point?
Yeah. Well, the idea you just said that God buried him because no one else could. It said
No,
only
but until
Well,
this very day is the key phrase.
right. It's this section starts off with وَيَعْلَ مُوشَى مِعَرَبُ مُؤَذْ إِلْهَارِ نِبَوْ. Now Moses is the one who, like I'm saying, wrote this last part about what's going to happen. He himself went up by himself. Nobody went up with him. And however he was buried, okay, it was done and no one knew it. So anyone reading the book that he left with him, because it says he gave the Torah, the book, to the Kohanim after he completed writing it to the very end. Okay? He gave it to them and then he goes up, he ascends. So anybody reading the book afterwards, from the time of Joshua, it would be to that day. They still don't know. To this day, I still don't know. It doesn't mean that there's going to come a point when someone's going to eventually know. Whatever time you're reading it, it's up to that point. We still don't know. No one knows even to this day. So I'm reading it, and it still is valid until my day, until this day right now that I'm reading it. No one still knows.
Oh, so you believe it's not suggesting that it somehow will be discovered someday, maybe if people look hard enough. It's meant to never be discovered.
Yeah, no one's ever gonna find it.
Just like the Garden of Eden.
And even let's just say, now it says he was buried in a valley, so he wasn't buried at the top of the mountain, like a lot of people think he was a mountain. He was buried in. It says he was buried in a valley, which is at the bottom of the mountain. It's in one of those caves or somewhere around there. But let's just say someone found a cave in that general area and found a whole bunch of bones. I don't think any of the bones have an inscription that says these are the bones of Moses.
Yeah, they're not going to know that it's Moses.
Even if they find it.
They could take DNA and then, whose DNA is Moses' DNA.
Yeah. We don't know. He's more than likely never going to be found anyway. It would be cool if they found him, but how would you prove it?
Yeah, there's no way.
There's no way to know. There would have to be something actually found with the body to say, oh, this is Moses. Maybe the staff that he had will blossom or something. I don't know. But it doesn't make any difference. The point is if we ask the question, who wrote about this part? I say it's Moses. Most of the early Qara'im are the same thing. He was a prophet. Why not?
Right. It was completely possible.
How is he going to write about the creation of the world? He wasn't there. Adam and Eve certainly didn't write it. Okay, why not write about something that's going to happen after his death? God had already told him, you're not going there. You're going to die. And that's when he began to write the book to the end, because that's why he chose Joshua. That's why he had the whole process. He says, you're not going to go. You're going to die before you get there. And Moses said, hey, don't leave your people without a leader, someone without a shepherd to lead them wherever they go. And that's why Joshua was chosen. And before he gave the book, or actually, I'm not sure if it was before or after, he gave the Torah to the Kohanim. It says he took off his mantle and put it on Joshua. So I say that Moses wrote it. But anyway, let's finish it because we're almost done.
Yeah, it's getting late.
Where were we?
I could do this all day, all night. I don't care.
وموشى بن 120 سنة بموته لو خحث عينه ولو الناس لخوه.
Keheh means dim.
Yeah.
In modern Hebrew too, keheh is dim. So his eyes is not dim, velo nas lecho. I don't know what that means. I mean, I know it from here, but I don't relate it to any Hebrew word that I can think of in modern. And it's also, I'm looking at now, it only appears once. It's a hapax legamenon.
Lecho. Lecho. And so it basically says his eyes didn't wear out, nor the lecho nas, which means to flee away his virility, I guess you could say. ويفكو בני ישראל את משה בערבות מואב 30 יום ויתמו ימי וכי אבל משה. And so the children of Israel lamented or cried about Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days. And
After giving him a hard time for his entire life, now all of a sudden they're crying for him. Even though it is a new generation, but still.
Yeah, I was about to say, now these are a different group. All the ones that whined and moaned, they're all dead.
Right.
It's just people today. They treat each other like shit, and then when they die, they cry at the funeral.
Yep. And so the days of the crying and the lamenting of Moses were completed. With Hushua ben Nun, Malay Ruach.
By the way, 30 days was also the amount of time they mourned for Joseph, right? Or for Yaakov, I'm sorry, after Yaakov died. It was 30 days.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that was a common thing. There is an idea in rabbinical Judaism of the Shloshim, the 30 days of mourning. So for the first 7 days, that's the most strict. You're supposed to sit in the house, sit Shiva. But then for 30 days, it's less strict. And then I think for a year, in the day of death of a close relative, there's also some mourning rituals which still are held in place.
So with Hushua ben Nun, Malay Ruach Chochmah, ישמח משה את ידיו עליו, וישמעו אליו בני ישראל, ויעשו כאשר ציווה אדוני את משה. And Joshua ben Nun, being full of the spirit of wisdom. Why? Because Moses ordained him by setting his hand. This is where all rabbis get their smicha.
Right, smicha.
But it just basically says he set his hand upon him. And they listened to him, and the children of Israel listened to him, and they did according to the commandments, or according to what Adonai commanded Moses. ולא قام נبي עוד בישראל כמשה, אשר ידעו אדוני פנים אל פנים. And there has not stood up or rose another prophet in Israel who was like Moses, who knew Asher Yida'o Adonai, whom Adonai knew him. I read it wrong the first time. Whom God knew, panim il panim, face to face. Lichul ha'othoth v'hamufethim asher shilecho Adonai le'asot be'eret Mitzrayim li'fara'o u'lichul avadav u'lichul aratzo. According to all the signs and the wonders which Adonai sent him to do in the land of Egypt, for Pharaoh and for all of his servants and for all of his land. Ulichul hayath hazacha ulichul hamura hagadol asher asa Moshe li'anei kul Yisrael. And for all of the great hand or the strong hand, the great signs or sights that Moses did in the eyes of all of Israel.
So the last word of the Torah. The last word of the Torah.
Yeah. So we finally read the entire Torah to the end. Yep.
And the last word of the Torah is Israel. Yeah.
So if we put them together, we have Bereshit Yisrael.
Right.
In the beginning, there was only Israel. And so God created the universe for Israel.
And what about China?
China are the people of Sin. That's why they're called Chini or the Sini.
Yeah, the people of sin. They have no God. They have no morality. So they're the people of sin.
Yeah.
They had a heaven a long time ago, but most of them are becoming a.
I'm joking. I've met
Anyway,
many moral things.
That is the end of the Torah. And so next week there actually is no Parashath. And then the following week we'll begin with Bereshit. I can't wait. That is one of the coolest books.
It certainly is.
But next week, we can either take a week off or we can meet and just have like an open question session.
Yeah.
Bring it on. Call all your rabbi friends. Tell your old daddy about us.
Or we could talk about Sukkot, or we could talk about the Chagim, the Chagim of the 7th month. Either way. We could talk about Yom Teruah, Yom Kippurim, and Sukkot. We'll decide during the week.
Yeah, because next Shabbat, I think, or next Shabbat is the 7th day. So Sunday would be Shemini Atzara.
Next Shabbat is going to be the 8th day. Shmini Atzeret will end
that
on
so that'll
the
be
end of Shabbat.
So we can talk about that.
You're going to continue with Joshua?
No, we go back to the beginning.
Oh. I was wondering, how different is the Samaritan book of Joshua?
They don't have a book of Joshua.
They have their own version of the book of Joshua. It's not part of their canon.
Joshua the heretic.
They have the book of Joshua, but it's not the same, and it's not part of their canon, but they still have it.
I have no idea what's written in it. I'll ask one of my Samaritan friends that I know what's in it, and maybe he can send me to a place where I can purchase it, and then I can read it, and we can talk about it. But I'm pretty sure it's different than the book that we have.
Mm-hmm.
Even their Torah that they have is different from the Torah we have.
Mm-hmm.
But I appreciate everyone showing up. I appreciate the good conversation, the great disagreements. Everything else is irrelevant.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, it was good.
It's always
good session, as always. Yep. Should we end with some music?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, let's see what we got here. I'll let the audience choose. Shall we do, let's see. Zusha songs? I don't know.
Mashiach. Lie.
Let's see it. How about Psalms 104 and Ancient Nada? Hava Nagila. Let's see. A Shira choir. El Hana'ar Hazeh by Shira choir. Let's try that.
Somebody's writing me again.
I can't take another second of this song.
That's it. Alrighty.
Oh, the other guy left.
Yeah, it's okay.
Okay. All right. So I guess we'll end it here, Yaakov.
All right, Shavua Tov, because this Shavua Tov
Yeah.
now here.
Yep. Shabbat Shalom here, and Shavua Tov to you, and we'll figure out what we're going to do next week.
Sukkot Sameach.
Hag Sukkot Sameach.
Yep. So just let me know.
All right. All right.
All right.
Sounds good, Yaakov. All right. Take care.
Oh.
Shabbat Shalom. Bye-bye.